Loaded show. Max Fried is a New York Yankee. Andres Jimenez was traded to the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Astros are reportedly listening on stars like Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez. So it's a perfect time to play general manager for the Houston Astros, and we're also going to do the same for the Kansas City Royals. But first, Roki Sasaki was posted today, and his agent Joel Wolf sat down with reporters at the winter meetings to give us some more clarity on where the 23-year-old Japanese phenom pitcher may end up. We're also going to check in with our winter meetings correspondent, Kevin Henry, to talk about what he's been hearing on this edition of the Just Baseball Show, Wednesday, December 11th. You got Arm Layton. I am Peter Apple. Arm, we're also going to discuss the number one overall pick, Washington Nationals. Congratulations. And all of this is brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Remember, folks, to use promo code JUSTBASEBALL for up to $1,500 back in bonus bets. Make sure to rate and review this podcast wherever you listen and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And make sure to like and keep up with the convo in the comment section below. I said before I pressed the record button, Arm, I had to write down this intro because there are so many things that just happened to the lead up of us pressing the record button. Can you say something? Because I'm out of breath right now.
I was about to say, I was waiting for you to go. just take your breath there. I mean, dude, good thing we pushed the episode back. It's funny. You and I hopped on Zoom. We were like, all right, we're about to go. And then you're like, wait, the draft lottery is in like 40 minutes. We might as well wait. In that time, the draft lottery became like the third most interesting thing that we were going to end up now discussing an hour and change later. And that's why the winter meetings are so incredible. Draft lottery was very funny, very awkward too. I do want to talk a little bit about that. They need to figure out how they're going to go about that. The broadcast. Why was Colton Cowser doing the picks? Do you know why? What?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why the Blue Jays traded for Andres Jimenez either. I don't know any of this. What's going on right now?
And Cowser just looked so uncomfortable the whole time, just like with the 17th pick, it's the Toronto Blue Jays or whoever has the 17th pick. And then I think he meant like you're so used to hearing with the 17th pick and then a player name, but there's no player name. It's just what pick you have. So he seemed like almost like stopping himself every time. There's nothing funnier though than the panel of guys and like when they get absolutely hosed, just seeing their face, just like, yeah. And a couple teams got hosed, and none worse than the Marlins. We'll talk about all that. What's the order here? You listed it all out. We have a million things to get into. I don't want to take us off of the path, but my gosh, we could start anywhere.
So let's stay on path. Let's start with the number one overall pick. Congratulations to the Nationals. I want to hear you kind of break down the draft lottery in a little bit more detail. Maybe talk about a few players that you think could potentially go number one overall. Then we'll talk about the Max Fried deal to the New York Yankees. Then we'll talk about the Andres Jimenez trade to the Toronto Blue Jays. Then we'll talk about Roki Sasaki's comments, or excuse me, Joel Wolf, Roki Sasaki's agents, his new comments. What this is all getting messed up. And then we're going to meet with Kevin Henry to hear what he's hearing during these winter meetings. And then we'll play general manager with the Astros and the Royals. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sounds great to me.
Up to you. Nationals get the first overall pick. What's your reaction? Because they didn't have the best odds to get the number one overall pick. That was the Rockies and the Marlins. How does this all work?
Yeah, so it's a bunch of ping pong balls, right? And you know, the Marlins and the Rockies had a 22.5% chance, which was ahead of everybody else. If you're wondering, well, what about the White Sox? The White Sox were barred from having a top 10 pick or a lottery pick, you know, because once you pick inside of the top 10 a couple of times, you can't do that three times in a row, which I actually like that. You know, it disincentivizes the idea of just consistently tanking. If you can't get your shit together after 2 years of having a top pick and presumably selling and whatever, like screw you, you don't deserve another top pick. So the White Sox not able to pick in the top 10, but that also made it a little bit more wide open for whoever else could maybe crack the top five. I didn't think it would shake out the way that it did in terms of, you know, a lot of the lower probability teams jumping into the very top of this. The Nationals, for example, had a 10% chance at the number one pick. That was the fourth highest odds. But for the Mariners, they had a 0.5% chance at the top at the number one pick. They end up still grabbing a top three pick, the third pick, if I'm not mistaken. The Angels, like they had a good chance at the top pick. They had an 18% chance. So they had the third highest probability of, grabbing the number one selection. They end up grabbing two. So it's really fascinating. I like the lottery. I know Marlins fans are probably livid about it right now. I don't blame them. I know Reds fans, they felt like they kind of got screwed, but then it came back to them, the next year. It disincentivizes just outright tanking. Obviously, teams are still going to sell and rebuild and all that good stuff, but like at least it makes it a little bit less clear cut of, okay, well, if I have the worst team, I know I've got the number one pick. Like the Marlins should look at this and say, hey, maybe we try to sign a couple free agents now and see if we can give it the old college try next year with the pitching staff we have. They obviously won't do that, but that's the goal of this, I think, lottery now that they've implemented is you shouldn't just automatically be rewarded for having the worst team in Major League Baseball.
Do you like this lottery system?
Yeah, so I just said I do like it. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be automatically rewarded for having the worst team. You're still going to have a top pick, like in top 10 pick and an opportunity to rebuild, but like it shouldn't just be, hey, if we're the worst team, we're going to have the biggest draft pool to work with and we're going to be able to, do whatever we want and I think it's not just the number one pick, it's the bonus pool that you have. We talk about being able to go under slot with the number one pick and then you can now get a first round talent in the compensation round or the second round and really just maximize your potential. It gives you so much more ability. It's almost like the international bonus pool. It's like you now have a larger pool than everybody else. That's inherently going to be an advantage. I don't think teams should be that much rewarded for not being good consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am curious too, and I know it's super, super early to be figuring out who's eventually going to go number one overall in this draft. There's a lot of time. They have to have a full college baseball season. So this answer is definitely going to change. Just like it was JJ Weatherholt right around this time last year. And then, of course, it ended up being Travis Bazzana. But right now, the Nationals just got the number one pick. Who are the way too early options that the Nationals can go with?
Yeah, I mean, Ethan Holiday, I think that's the name that a lot of people have been talking about for a while now. Of course, brother of Jackson Holiday. And, there's a lot to like there. Obviously, great bloodlines, great situation there. And a guy that's expected to be one of the top picks. And then I think you look at like Jace Lavalette, outfielder from Texas A&M, massive, massive, massive power potential. But also Jamie Arnold, and that seems like the best fit. And it could be, this is a perfect opportunity here, right? Where Jamie Arnold, left-handed pitcher from Florida State, he might not be the number one prospect in the draft. But if you really need a pitcher, and the Nationals do, you can now take Jamie Arnold with the first pick, underslot him if he doesn't, he could dominate and end up being the clear cut number one pick. Funky lefty, really interesting. But let's say he isn't for the sake of the argument. You could save money with that number one overall selection and then now use that to get another potential first round talent with your next selection. So it just affords the Nationals so many different opportunities and ways to kind of mix and match, but also you could just chalk it and take the number one player available and feel really good about that as well. So it puts them in a really good spot. I also, think when you look at their situation, it really allows them to bolster up that system that's already good. That they already have Dylan Cruz up there, they already have James Wood, they already have all these pieces. I think it puts them in an awesome spot. And then you look at the number two pick with the Los Angeles Angels. We've seen them draft guys that they could push quickly, and now, I mean, they'll have the number two pick where they could really push somebody quickly, and it could be the best college bat in the draft, right? If Lavalette's there to them, they could take him, and he could be in the majors tomorrow. So, like, that's going to be really cool with that wrinkle. And then the Mariners is just a fun one because they're the best team within this top 10 on the major league side of things. And they somehow were able to get the number three pick despite a 0.5% chance at the number one pick. Like the Mariners, they always get creative with the draft. They could also do some really fun things. And then I also think it was nuts that the Cardinals, were able to get that number five pick. They had less than a 1% chance at the top pick as well. So, some teams that are in a little bit better big league situations, getting top picks is definitely helpful, but just also to round out the rest of the top 10, Rockies have the fourth pick, Pirates have the sixth pick, Marlins 7, Blue Jays 8, Reds 9, and then the White Sox 10, because that was the best pick that they could have. You can't pick inside of the top 10 after doing that 2 consecutive years prior.
So Nationals fans got to be hyped. You got the number one
Oh yeah.
overall pick the year after getting Dylan Cruz, like you said, James Wood, and they of course have CJ Abrams still at the top, and they have plenty of young pitchers. Also, we watched Brady House at the Futures game. That dude hits absolute moon tanks. If you're a Nationals fan right now, you have to be incredibly excited about the future. And Yankee fans, they weren't really excited about what would happen after losing Juan Soto. I'm sure it took a second, at least for me, a Yankee fan, to get over that. A few days later, Max Fried, 8 years, $218 million, the highest amount of money guaranteed ever given to a left handed pitcher in baseball history, Aram.
Yeah,
But is
which
it
is
worth it?
crazy.
It is
It
crazy.
it doesn't seem like it with the numbers we've had thrown out, over the last couple of years, and especially this year, that feels like that number, the largest deal to a left-handed pitcher like ever, would be so much higher. Kind of shows you how, rare it is to be able to corral an elite left-hander. And also just the timing of things. And I'm sure another left-hander is going to come and top that sooner rather than later. You got to be thrilled if you're a Yankees fan, right? You talked about it. Just what's the pivot going to look like? You have an opportunity here. Of course, you wanted Juan Soto, but you have an opportunity here to, piece together the team. And let's be honest, the Yankees needed more than Juan Soto. Obviously, you want to have one of the best hitters in the game, but like they have an opportunity now to fill a couple voids. This was a huge void. I think it's pretty crazy that they're going 8 years here, but it seems like that was what they needed to do to be able to get him. And with other teams competing, including the Red Sox, and you really don't want him to go there after just losing Juan Soto to the Mets. You don't want to lose out on a pitcher now to your rival as well. They had to go an extra year or two. It may not age the best on the back end, but I think with Fried's arsenal and everything, it has a chance to. At the end of the day, you're focused on the next 3, 4 years, especially with the fact that, a lot of money's going to come off the books in year 7, 8. Even in the next 5 years, a lot of that money will come off the books for the Yankees. So you'll cross that bridge when you get there. Hopefully, Fried's still good when he's 37, 38. But I think the Yankees are more focused on how he's throwing from age 30 to 34. And there's a chance he could be one of the better arms in baseball. So much needed addition. And I think balances out a rotation that kind of needed a pitchability guy.
Yeah, love the fit for the Yankees for a few reasons. Number one, I got a lot of hate for this online when I tweeted it out. This stat: Max Fried, since the year 2019, ranks 20th in Major League Baseball in innings. In that span, since 2019, he has a 3.06 ERA. Among those top 20 pitchers in innings since 2019, that is the second best ERA, only trailing Garrett Cole. So I came out and I said, he's been very durable. And I got a lot of pushback. I think most notably from Braves fans and just general Yankees haters, which I can respect, right? The general Yankees haters online, there's some good back and forth there. But I was surprised because it was as if I said he was Steven Strasburg. Or excuse me, it said I was the opposite of Steven Strasburg, a guy who's never been on the field or something like that. These are the facts. 20th in innings. Since 2019, he has made at least 28 starts in every season outside of 2023 when he got injured. It's been consistently 160 to 180 innings for Max Fried, barring one injury season in 2023, and he pitched the majority of the 2020 shortened year. So, yes, Braves fans, has he been on the IL a couple of times? Yes. But look around the landscape of Major League Baseball. What pitchers haven't? So, in this day and age, 824 innings in the last 5 years is durable.
Yeah.
If you are top 20 in innings in that span, that's the definition of durability. And then in that span, he's been the second most productive pitcher in Major League Baseball. Another reason I like the fit: Yankee Stadium, short porch in right field. It's a little bit easier to get the ball out of the ballpark. Well, Max Fried in 2024 had the second lowest ground ball rate in baseball, only trailing Framber Valdez, and notably ahead of right-handed pitcher Logan Webb of the San Francisco Giants. He's a big-time pitcher. He's pitched in a lot of big-time games. He's a lefty, which is great. And also, it opens up a few more possibilities for the Yankees, because right now, their rotation looks like Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Luis Gil, Clark Schmidt, but they also still have Nestor Cortez Jr., and they also still have Marcus Stroman. And now Yankees Twitter is abuzz. Could Luis Heel or Clark Schmidt be packaged in a huge deal to get some big time bats? Potentially. But what it
Mhm.
does mean right now is that these five pitchers, that is one of the best rotations in Major League Baseball. Now, the team needs more work. You lose out on Juan Soto. You definitely need to add more bats. So I love the fit. But if this is the end of the Yankees offseason, this is truly not good enough. It creates
No.
a great rotation, but it cannot be enough here. So, in terms of the contract, 8 years, 218 million, 27 million per for 8 years for a 30-year-old pitcher. Yeah, it's a little bit too much. We said that as soon as before we press the record button, I said it was a little bit rich. I can admit that, right? We can admit that.
Yeah.
But we also see how the market is unfolding. Alex Cobb just signed with the Detroit Tigers. He passed his physical and they gave him $16 million after throwing about 16 innings last year. The market for pitching is just really, really expensive. There were multiple deals on the table. There was multiple 7-year deals, according to, all of these reports. And the Yankees, to get their guy, probably had to do the 8th year to get him. Is it the
Yeah.
most rational choice? Is it the perfect amount of money? No. But I think to sign any free agent in this day and age, especially in this offseason, with so many teams going after, especially pitching, you're going to have to give up a little bit more if you want your guy. And that's what they did. So the grade I would give it, I think it's an A- deal. I think
Yeah.
that's fair. I think if you're a Yankee fan today, you should be very, very excited, like I
Yeah.
am.
And you shouldn't be worried about the money. I would only be worried about the average annual value because you want to have some flexibility to do some more things. And I think the Yankees clearly are okay blowing past some of the tax thresholds, but yeah, there's a certain point where you can only go so far financially. And I think 27 million AAV, like that's a pretty good deal. As you mentioned with like Alex Cobb getting 15, 16 with escalators, I could bring it up higher than that. And good deal. Like I like him as a fit, but 10 million more per year basis, like Max Fried is one of the better pitchers in the game. Of course, you're paying for the money on the back end, and it's almost like a mini deferral, right? Where you're adding the year on, and that's part of the value that Fried was able to get out of this deal. But the difference is, like, if he just pitches as at an okay level. When he's in his later 30s, his velo will be down a little bit, but he's got this assortment of pitches and, he's surviving for you. Like, that's fine. I don't think you'll be too worried about that in, 2033. But I think ultimately for right now, this is the guy I think that you had to have circled. I look at Corbin Burns as well, but I honestly think that Fried might be a better fit for the Yankees than Burns, and he's probably going to be cheaper. I think Burns is going to start to push closer to 250. I'm really curious to see what that
Probably
number
more.
ends up being. It
Probably
might be
more.
more.
Yeah.
And I think Fried is the best fit for the Yankees and gives them something that they really needed. You talk about the ground ball rate too. The Yankees were like back half of the middle of the pack. I think 16th in Major League Baseball in ground ball rate last year. And I think if you're the Yankees and you talk about where they can have the propensity for the home run given the dimensions of the stadium, you want to be in the top 10 in
Yes.
ground ball rate, so I think that's something that absolutely helps them a ton. And, that Rodon and Garrett Cole aren't going to get you a ton of ground balls, right? Like Garrett Cole, 38% ground ball rate, Rodon, 34% ground ball rate, Clark Schmidt, 40% ground ball rate, Luis Heel, 35% ground ball rate. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the ground balls were actually coming from the bullpen. So if you look at the
Yes.
starting rotation as well, even less grounders, like it is good to have a guy like Fried kind of balancing out this rotation.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the trade. Andres Jimenez and right-handed reliever Nick Sandlin, friend of the Just Baseball show, is headed to Toronto in exchange for first baseman slash second baseman Spencer Horwitz. And we were talking before we press the record button again, saying Spencer Horwitz was the second best hitter on the Blue Jays last year, only to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now it's interesting because Andres Jimenez signed a pretty decently sized extension with Cleveland. And I have been very, very upset because I see a lot in Andres Jimenez. I think he's a great player. And I've said that, but over the past few years, the bat has just been simply non existent. And at second base, His defense is as good as it gets, but it's second base. Maybe they have a plan to move him over to shortstop, but then what is truly his value? Because you expect the defense to diminish a little bit, of course, when you go over to shortstop from second base. And then if the bat doesn't show up, he'd be a very good defensive shortstop without much of a bat. How much value is that? And then you get Nick Sandlin, who is coming off a tough year, but has proven that he is at least a solid reliever in the long run. But if you are a Cleveland Guardians fan, and I think we share the same opinion, you cleaned up here. I mean, I thought they did an excellent, excellent job. And I know it creates a little bit of a logjam again at first base because he has played some first base, but I think that you can basically kind of lock him into second base. But is Travis Bazana going to come up? There's a lot of different ways that we can work around this deal. But if I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan, I have to be really, really excited here. And I'm sorry, Blue Jays Nation. Like, I think the Guardians won this trade, but we also don't have all the details. We're recording about 20 minutes out after the deal's been made. So maybe this isn't the finalized deal. But again, we started the podcast, 15 minutes ago, and we still haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, and it's making me nervous that it might just be the finalized deal somehow, which it just doesn't make sense to me. Like there's got to be money going the other way. There's got to be something going on because look, and Guardians fans should be happy if the Guardians reinvest some of this money that they've presumably cleared up into bettering the team. I love the addition of Horwitz because I think this is a guy that's one of the more underrated bats. The problem for him is kind of where do you play him? It's kind of a tweener second base, first base profile, but he's a guy now that can fill in a lot at second base in the meantime. And also a guy that if you do end up moving off a nailer, can play some first base as well. He's just a pure hitter that I think really fits in well overall. The Guardians apparently are also receiving Nick Mitchell. So they got another prospect as well, who was recently a fourth round pick and put up some okay numbers in low A this past year. So I want to see the money side of things. I'm hoping that there'll be some more details there because that's a lot of money to take on. I'd imagine that the plan would be to move Jimenez to shortstop when you move off of Bo Bichette. Maybe they'll trade Bichette this offseason. Maybe they'll wait now and have Bichette play short and Jimenez play second, and then Jimenez will then move to short next year, like 2026. I don't know. It gives them some options. If you look at the smaller sample sizes at shortstop, Jimenez has graded out as a well above average defender. So maybe, that defense holds as plus, then it makes a little bit more sense. But looking at the contract now, it's 10.5 million in 2025. It's 15.5 million in 2026. Then 2027 through 2029 is 23 million per year with a $23 million club option in 2030. That's a lot of money for defense.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of money. And I understand the
Second,
shortstops
and
aren't cheap, but like, man, they're really banking on a bounce back here.
And shout out Johnny Junta from the Gate 14 podcast. Love what he does on social media. I love that whole group. I think they're hilarious. What they continually brag about, and I know they're kind of joking, but it is important that they've won the Team Gold Glove Award in back-to-back years. So you're adding more defense and trading away bats? That's why I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to us on top of everything. Is that even the fit for the Toronto Blue Jays? Because if you plan to move him over to shortstop, that means Bichette is gone, one of your best hitters, right? I know he's coming off a really bad year offensively for Bo Bichette, but it's still Bo Bichette. We expect him to bounce back. So if you're not then going to move off Bichette, that means it's second base, defense, where it's not as valuable as a center fielder or even a third baseman, a shortstop, a catcher. It's important, but it's second base defense, especially without the shift as well. So I'm trying to find the light for the Blue Jays. Is there a light here? What would be look at this trade right now. What is Ross Atkins thinking? Like, try and get into his head, even though I know you think it's a bad deal for Toronto. What's he doing?
I think Ross Atkins is one of the worst executives in the sport at this point. I really do. We've talked about it even when they snuck their way into the playoffs, like the way that they go about things. I think you look at a lot of the roster moves. I don't totally get it. Thought he made some good moves at the deadline. So give him some credit there. I think he's looking at it like 19 million AAV for a guy that should be our shortstop moving forward with a high floor, even when he doesn't hit well. He's a 3-win player. So, you move him to shortstop, even with that defense being maybe a little bit neutered. Like, it's still going to be more valuable from a war
But
perspective.
Aram, that means Bichette's gone. Like if they're moving him to short, that means Bichette. Like they can't. There's no way that they're then better.
I think if you move Bichette at that point now, I think that they're feeling like they can add to the offense in other ways. Are they going to add, uh, a free agent outfielder or spend somewhere else? Like clearly they want to spend. Like they were in on Soto as well. They were in on Otani before, and if that's the case, you took on this money, but as soon as this year, it's still just 10 and a half this year. It's 15 and a half in 2026, and then it really escalates in 2027 onward. But you hope at that point, maybe the offense is regained a little bit. But regardless, they can now still go spend a fair amount of money. And if you move Bichette, kind of wipes away. I think what is he going to get in arbitration this year? I'd imagine it's a pretty decent size check. So I think the only way that this could be justifiable is if they go out and spend. And I think they could. And by the way, Bo Bichette's supposed to make 17.5 million this year. So if you move Bichette, that technically would clear up 7 million this year and then go spend on some top free agents. That's the only way that this could make sense to me. I think they should have moved anyone other than Horwitz. I think he's a really underrated bat, but I
Yeah.
also understand that they have Addison Barger coming up. They probably still believe in Orelvis Martinez. Like they still have other guys in the fold there. But I'm with you. Like they need offense. And I think the only way that this trade is justifiable is if they go out and sign some dudes. And they tried with Soto, so maybe that's what they're going to do.
So here's what we're talking about with Spencer Horowitz for anyone who's not too familiar with his game. So Spencer Horowitz in 2024 slash 265, 357 on base percentage with a 433 slug. He hit 12 home runs in 328 at bats, but really displayed some excellent plate discipline. Only struck out 18% of the time while walking 11% of the time. Now, he's not known for his speed, but like Arm said, hits the ball pretty hard, always puts up a good at bat, and a 790 OPS, adding that bat into the Guardians lineup when they already play great defense kind of around the diamond. Guardians fans just have to be happy to get that type of bat because if we're looking at Andres Jimenez just over the past few years offensively, it just hasn't been good enough. Right? 2022 was the breakout year, an 837 OPS. That's when he signs the big time extension. And then from there, 713 OPS in 2023, still stole 30 bags, hit 15 home runs. It was good enough to be a solid player. And he is 26 years old. He's a year younger than Spencer Horowitz. But then in 2024, a 638 OPS. He didn't even get on base at a 300 clip. Home runs dropped down to just 9. Batted ball quality was really, really poor. Didn't walk at all, a 4.1% walk rate, but he'll still steal bases. He's going to play elite defense at second base. But it's a 638 OPS at second base. It's just, yeah, there's speed and there's defense, but and you're also paying a good amount of money for him too. It's you're hoping the bat comes back because he did show it a few years ago and he is just 26 years old. But if you look at a graph of his OPS right now, we're trending down,
Yeah.
right? And this isn't just one down year after back-to-back great years. This is a trend. 830 to 713 down to 638. I mean, that's just
638, dude.
638 OPS.
And you said, let me grab him. That's a guy that I want on my team. And if he hit the open market to this right now, let's say he's a free agent, he's not
1 year
getting
deal.
90 million.
I think he's getting a 1 year deal.
Yeah, maybe a 1+1.
Or he's 26 years old, so maybe someone would give him a multi-year deal. But what would you pay on the
It would
open?
be it would be like I'd give him a multi-year deal if it was low AAV, just knowing that the floor is so high. Because the floor is high.
Who would you rather sign, Gleyber Torres or Andres Jimenez?
Oh man.
I mean, I'm just thinking in my head, if I was a Yankee fan and we traded Gleyber Torres and a reliever for Spencer Horowitz, I'd be like, hell yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
would be awesome.
And
And
imagine
Gleyber
you had
Torres has objectively been a much better bat than Andres Jimenez has.
they're like the opposite of each other, which is funny, and they're both valuable like in different ways in terms of what they do well and then what they're deficient at. But I mean, at the same price point, I don't know, man. Like
Six
I, I
years,
almost, I'd
6 years.
almost want to take the offensive upside, especially if I'm the Blue Jays. And that's
Yeah.
the crazy part is they could have just signed Glaber for a fraction of what Jimenez is owed, and then just waited to figure out the shortstop thing. Chilled with Bichette for another year. If you're trading him now, you're still trading him at his lowest. Could have just let him go, recoup the comp pick, give it a shot this year with him there. And I just, yeah, I'm gonna wait until I fully blast this deal until they do some more things or don't. But again, if they allocate money and really bolster up this offense, and Jimenez ends up playing short for them, I could start to maybe understand it a little bit more.
Do you think I could just hear the YouTube comments below and Blue Jays fans, Guardians fans, fans of all teams let us know. Are we overvaluing Spencer Horowitz a little bit after that season? He is 27 years old. I just really liked the bat last year.
Even just like it is crazy that Horowitz was in the deal, but like even just taking on the contract in a vacuum is crazy to me. But I mean, Horowitz may have had some good batted ball luck or whatever. The expected stats wouldn't really indicate that.
Yeah,
I
no.
think he just hits. I think there's a value. The value of a player like that is somewhat capped because of the defensive limitations. But again, if he can just get by at second or first base, like this dude's going to be a solid hitter that I think can hover around a high 700s OPS and just be a good bat for you. Like a lot of their other young bats are still trying to find that footing at the big league level. I just don't understand why you would trade one of the few young guys that fully found that footing last year. I know he's not a great defender at second base, and that's probably part of the reason why they wanted to move him. Like it is probably more of a first base profile, but still, I would have loved to have had that bat in the fold. For me, the bigger part of it is just taking on this deal. But if money ain't a thing and they're going to keep spending, like I don't think I wouldn't let Spencer Horwitz stop me from adding Jimenez in a vacuum. But again, the money side of it makes it crazy to me that then they're also adding Horwitz to it.
I think that Spencer Horowitz haters or maybe big time Blue Jays fans can point to the fact, well, Army can't hit lefties at all, or at least he didn't last year. Slash 194, 272, 250 against lefties. But then against righties, where he's going to face most, 285, 380, 484 for an 864
Yeah,
OPS
good.
against right-handed pitching. I mean, that's mostly what we're going to get. And Andres Jimenez put up a 574 OPS against left-handed pitching too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
A lot of value in defense here. And I get
for
it.
a team
You're,
that is already arguably the best defensive team in Major League Baseball, though. Like
yeah.
that's the team that Andres Jimenez.
Again, I think if he's playing short, I get it a little bit more. They better get really creative and make a lot of moves to make this make sense.
All right. So before we talk about Roki Sasaki and his agent, Joel Wolf, his comments, which gave us a little bit more clarity on potentially what situation would fit best for the 23-year-old Japanese phenom. We're going to take a quick break. So, Joel Wolf, Roki Sasaki's agent, met with reporters today as we're recording Tuesday, December 10th, where he announced that the 23-year-old is going to be officially posted today, right? He's going to be eligible to sign as an international amateur free agent once the next international signing period begins on January 15th. And remember, that doesn't mean he is going to be signed by January 15th. Teams actually can't sign him until the 15th when this new period opens. The 45-day posting period ends January 24th. So Sasaki is most likely going to sign in that week between January 15th and January 24th. But that's not what I really want to talk about here. I want to talk about Joel Wolf's comments because he said to reporters at the winter meetings that the media in Japan gave Roki Sasaki a very hard time for his desire to leave the MPB for Major League Baseball a few years earlier than like a Yoshinobu Yamamoto might. In Japanese culture, and this is according to an article on The Athletic, it's considered disrespectful and I quote, as a result, Sasaki has been subject to false rumors and accusations. So, Aram, I want to read you this quote, and it's kind of long, but it's super, super fascinating to kind of get inside the head. And it's also at the end of it, I don't understand why Joel Wolf even said this. So, and I quote, I think that there's an argument to be made that smaller mid market teams might be more beneficial for him as a soft landing spot coming from Japan, given what he's been through and not having an enjoyable experience with the media. It might be, I'm not saying it will be, I don't know how he's going to view it, but it might be beneficial for him to be in a smaller market. I really don't know what he looks at it yet because I haven't had a chance to really sit down with him and discuss it with him in great detail. So I'm bringing up that quote for a few things. Number one, I'm fascinated by the fact that he took the media scourge to heart, right? That might have really affected him. I'm also surprised that he and his agent haven't sat down and talked about that yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have, and he's portraying this unsureness about it. That whole quote, fascinating to me.
Yeah, that was wild. Well, the reality is every team can give him roughly the same amount, right? Some teams a little bit more based on the bonus pool allocation, but for the most part, like it's going to be out of that limited international bonus pool. So there's not much incentive to, cozy up to the big market teams. And I think a lot of ball clubs and even us included in the narrative, I think a lot of people in media just said, oh, it's going to be one of the big teams. Why would he want to go anywhere else, especially when all things are equal? But I think this was Wolf maybe saying, hey, we want everybody to give it their best shot. Sasaki's going to give everybody a fair look. So I took this a little bit as just him encouraging all 30 teams to give their best pitch. But it's still interesting because I think there is a lot of truth to this. Like Sasaki did not have an easy time out there. I mean, if you read the statements from his team from the Marines when he left, it was like very weird and like, we had some ups and Sasaki's like, we had some ups and downs, but I appreciate them letting me go. And like, apparently he made it very obvious that he wanted to get out of there for a while now. And as you said, that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. It seemed like at times like there was some clash with the team and everything like that. So that softer landing I could understand. Like I don't know how he would handle then if that was a struggle for him, like in New York or
Or
in
in
LA. So
LA. Yeah.
I get that. So I think some of it was just to let smaller market teams know, like, hey, you got a shot. Like he will look everywhere. But it
But
was it was interesting to be so outward about that. It's not going to turn anybody off. Everyone's still going to offer him the same thing. But like other than encouraging all 30 teams, I didn't really see much gain in doing that. I feel like it
that's the
almost
thing.
might bring more scrutiny when he comes over and saying like, why did he rub people the wrong way? I think people are going to be like more hyper focused on that now.
That's what I was saying. And then the fact that he says we haven't even talked about it. And I also, you said that these big market teams are still going to offer him the same thing. You don't think they'd be a little bit turned off by that, or at least look into it further? Like if you're Brian Cashman of the Yankees, if you're Andrew Friedman of the Dodgers, even if you're AJ Preller of the Padres, Jed
For
Hoyer of
sure,
the
but then
Cubs.
you're signing him for $6-7 million. Like,
Yeah,
who cares? Like if it's a problem, you can probably trade him or whatever. If it's not working well, plenty of teams will still be lining up to take a shot at him. But I didn't see much benefit to that. Like there was a lot of other ways where I think you could have made it clear to all 30 teams that it's going to be a very open process. Um, Maybe I mean these agents are smart, and Joel's a smart guy.
yeah, he's
He's
smart as shit.
he could be playing the game a certain way, and there's a reason why he's moving these chess pieces the way that he is. But I'm with you. Like it didn't really make a lot of sense. If I were him, I'd want to be doing anything to really put that behind him, right? Like and
Yes,
like just kind of erase that narrative. Like the one thing you have working in your favor is like there is not a lot of conversion over to like Japanese media and what we have going on over here. Like we don't really know what they're running out there stories wise. We don't see a lot of it. So like if there was criticism, like most of us aren't that privy to it. So I thought that part was interesting, but I appreciate the honesty and like some of the things that I was hearing from scouts were that sometimes the body language was a little bit frustrating. Sometimes teammates were frustrated with him, and that he's a young guy. So I think just acknowledging that it still was a bit of a surprise. What I do like about this though is it feels like it is a lot more open than the media made it to be. And I think that's good news. Like it should be a wide open process instead of just, oh, he already has this agreement with the Dodgers, blah, 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 blah. Like it seems like that's probably not going to be the case. And, with those comments, I really do believe that it is wide open.
And speaking about those West Coast reports, because we've heard throughout this process that the two teams who have the best chance of signing him are number one, the LA Dodgers, number two, the San Diego Padres. And it makes sense because a lot of us think, well, Japan is closer to the West Coast. It's that easier trip over if he wants to bring family in California, especially with the Dodgers, right? They already have these Japanese players. In San Diego, you have you Darvish, and it's a great landing spot for a future stud like Roki Sasaki. But Joel Wolf was asked about, is there coastal bias? And he said, and I quote from this Athletic article, I think about 5 or 10 years ago, that was something that maybe they weighed a little bit more. But now you can fly direct from Japan to most of the major cities in the US. It's not really that much of an issue anymore. So I think that furthers your point about opening it up and saying, hey, we're open to any market. We want to hear the pitch from everybody. So I think that is kind of Joel Wolf's plan, but I
Yeah.
think he was just a little bit too honest there. I didn't
Yeah.
think he had to include all that stuff about the media and about how hard it has been. And that's one thing. And then saying we haven't talked with Roki, though, about it. We aren't sure is like, what have you been talking about that? You're just your favorite
Yeah.
food, your favorite color?
Yeah, like I guess maybe they were gonna wait until they get all the pitches anyways, but like you still should kind of figure it out and figure out the due diligence and get ahead of it a little bit. I think the side of it that, we haven't had a conversation much about it is kind of wild to me too. But I think that was also in part to combat the narrative of and the false accusations that he very much was adamant. Like we don't have an agreement in place. We have barely talked about it. So I think that was part of what maybe was the point of him saying that.
And we're lucky because we have Kevin Henry, official BBWA writer at the winter meetings. He sat down with our Jack McMullen for about 15 minutes to go over what he is hearing at the winter meetings right now.
Kevin Henry, an exceptional writer at justbaseball.com, is at the winter meetings in Dallas and Arlington. Is it Dallas downtown?
No, we're right in the heart of Dallas here at the Hilton Anatolia, and yeah, it's welcome to the media room here here in Dallas.
That's phenomenal. It's very beige, I will say, but
Yes, yeah,
you have hit this insane fever pitch in the last 20 minutes or so, where you had the
yeah.
conclusion of the MLB Draft Lottery, and then you had Max Fried signing with the Yankees, and then you had Andres Gimenez going to the Blue Jays. As we record right now, we're waiting on that return from Toronto to Cleveland. But in terms of overall temperature, because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this and watching this have never even sniffed the winter meetings. Maybe some have gone for the job fair, or you just know that's a place where things happen. What does the hotel lobby look like right now?
Yeah, the hotel lobby, honestly, it's dark as we record this. It's dark out there, so it's got the Christmas lights, it's got the holiday feel to it and all that stuff. But it's lit up also with people on their cell phones. I mean, there's all sorts of activity going out there. Uh, you talked about the Blue Jays trade. I guarantee you all the Blue Jays media members are out there right now trying to figure out what that return is.
Yeah.
There's just so much activity. And the thing is about this is that, it's not just the MLB clubs. I ran into some folks with the Tulsa Drillers that I know real well, so a lot of the MILB is out here as well. It's just crazy how busy it is, and just winding your way back here to the press room. Yeah, it's definitely got some buzz for sure.
It's one of those landmark events on the baseball calendar, and I think one that flies under the radar because there's not actual baseball to be played around it. You
Right.
think about All-Star Weekend, and you've got the Futures game, and then you've got the Derby, and you've got the celebrity softball game and all that. But
Yeah.
it's strictly transactional. Is there much socializing that happens there, or are a lot of people just glued to their phones all in the same place?
No, there's the Starbucks is the hot spot. There's a couple of restaurants that are right by here, so it's always packed. Doesn't matter the time of day. There's always people in there. And again, it's networking. There's a lot of folks looking for jobs here, but there's a lot of folks just looking for that latest rumor. And there are definitely some deals being made here. I mean, as you said, it's blowing up right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a quick moving Tuesday, and we're going to check in with Kevin as well on the Thursday show on Wednesday evening. But earlier on Tuesday, you were in a media scrum involving Joel Wolf of Wasserman, who
Yeah.
represents Roki Sasaki. And That is one of these stories, one of the main stories that has come out of the winter meetings, aside from, a $200 million contract. And the night before, they actually kicked off a $765 million contract. But Sasaki's situation is intricate and it's layered. And teams obviously will be working with a set pool of money, and pretty much everybody can be a contender. What we know for sure is because he was posted and because international bonus pools essentially reset on January 15th, Sasaki will sign between January 15 and January 23. Kevin, what else did you pick up from Joel, from Sasaki's agent, when it came to the process in which, he'll make his way stateside?
Yeah, I think for him, this is going to be such a learning process. He made very clear. One of the things that I picked up from Joel Wolf was that Sasaki doesn't know much about American cities. He doesn't know much about the landscape. He watches the MLB games. He says he keeps up with the teams and everything else, but there's a difference between watching the Dodgers and really knowing what LA is like. And so I think that this is going to be a huge indoctrination experience for him. And he also talked about how that, one of the interesting quotes, and I did a story for Just Baseball on this. He talked about how that a mid-market team may be a really good soft landing spot for him. And you saw the people in San Diego perk up big time whenever that was mentioned.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things already connecting the Padres to Sasaki, but I think that gave them so much hope now that maybe this is something that they could actually see become a reality.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. And I think mid market, the word mid is very important there because I
Yeah,
think a lot of people saw, oh, Sasaki wants to prioritize development. Oh, he's going to Tampa. Tampa is not a mid market organization. They are a small market organization. But the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets are all large market organizations.
right.
San Diego fits that bill. I've been pounding the pavement that I think Texas makes a lot of sense for a Roki Sasaki, and Texas is, a mid market team. Why do you feel like that could be endearing aside from, getting his feet wet? And obviously I saw the quotes about the media presence in Japan causing
Yeah.
some angst with him.
And I think that's such a big point is that the Joel Wolf kept talking about what kind of person Sasaki was today. We all know the pitcher, but
Yeah.
but today was about the person and about that he's really kind of a private guy and that he's somebody that he doesn't talk a lot. In fact, Joel was kiddingly saying that he talks so much that Sasaki kind of shuts him down because he's like, that's enough talking for right now. Let's move on to something else. And so I think that just knowing all of that, it makes more sense to go somewhere that's maybe a little quieter, maybe a little more laid back with it, that you could truly develop into your own person and really, let's be honest, develop your own brand, develop your own identity. I think that's an important thing for Sasaki.
Yeah, being a front man is a very, intriguing option for a guy like him.
Absolutely.
I know Joel spoke a little bit about prioritizing teams with, fellow countrymen on the roster and
Yeah.
how that may not be at the top of his list.
No, and there's been all sorts of people. We talked about San Diego a minute ago, and that it was going to be a shoe in because of Yu Darvish and the relationship there. Joel kind of put a little bit of cold water on that. Basically saying that he doesn't really know the relationships, and maybe we shouldn't read too much into that because for Sasaki it was as much about learning what he did during WBC with his teammates that were on that and learning from them as much as any other relationship. So if you take a grain of salt from that. You look at that WBC roster, well, there's a lot of options, obviously, for Sasaki there.
Yeah, 100%. You heard from Joel Wolf. You've heard from, several agents. I think Boris addressed the media at the
Of
beginning
course.
of the winter
Of
meetings.
course.
Dropped a couple puns. Did he have any puns that stood out to you or no?
I'll be honest, I did not hear. I wasn't around for him, but I can tell you just the difference in tone between Joel Wolf's press conference and where he reluctantly went up on the stage here in the press room versus Boris, holding court. It was a night and day.
I'm sure. You've also, I'm sure, heard from plenty of skippers and
Yeah,
executives as well. And I saw, tying back to your Rocky roots as well, I know Coors is your home ballpark.
it
I
is.
watched Bill Schmidt on MLB Network, and I heard him mention that Chase Dolander has, should be given every opportunity to make the team out of spring training. There were some really interesting nuggets from Bill when it comes to
Mhm.
the quote unquote let the kids play movement.
Very much so. And we got a chance to go up in the suite with Bill and talk to him a little bit more. One of the questions that I asked him because we know how Cal Quantrill is loved at Just Baseball. We know
Right.
that.
Right.
And obviously no longer with the Rockies. And I asked Bill point blank, I said, was letting Cal go a very much an indictment of what you think about this next generation of pitching coming in, that you feel like they're going to be ready. And his answer was absolutely, and so I think you could read a lot into that. Yes, they've got Feltner and Gomber and Freeland and Marquez and Senzatella. They've got their five right now, but it's also something that we know that a lot of those guys have been injury prone. A lot of those guys have also been, shall we say, setback prone whenever it comes to the stats. And so I think that they will absolutely, I would be stunned just after talking and listening to Bill here if you don't see Dollander up there by Memorial Day.
Wow. Okay, so Dolander, again, given every opportunity to make the team out of spring, and Kevin is saying by Memorial Day, you also have a couple other intriguing arms: Sean Sullivan, a funky lefty; Carson
Yep.
Palmquist, a funky lefty as well. So some execs there. We're with Kevin Henry at JustBaseball.com, and I do want to ask about some of the skippers' media
Yeah.
availability. So
Yeah.
Terry Francona, Craig Counsell, two of which jump to the forefront of my mind, but I do want to start with Bob Melvin
Yeah.
because he has a very unique circumstance in his hands right now, and that is working with a new president of baseball operations in Buster Posey, and he had some pretty rave reviews about Buster, it seems.
Yeah, you can tell that they have clicked automatically. And you think of all the moves that are made this offseason. I think San Francisco elevating Posey and him putting his fingerprints. I think we're going to look back at this offseason and go, that was probably one of the biggest moves that was made by any team.
Wow.
And absolutely, he and Melvin have clicked already. And I think you see that with the Willie Adames deal, is that they wanted to make sure that they were not the also ran of this year as they have been in the past. And I think that they have absolutely made that mark. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time around Bob Melvin. Like you said at Coors, he would always come through with the Padres and now with the Giants. And he's got a little different attitude. It's a little gleam in his eye, shall we say? I think that him and AJ Preller didn't exactly mesh in San Diego, and I think that he's finally found somebody that he does mesh a lot with in Posey.
I think he's got a baseball guy in Buster
Yeah,
Posey, and that's no indictment on AJ Preller. Obviously, AJ is very good at what he does, but AJ was not an all star. AJ was not an MVP. Buster Posey was an all star, and Buster Posey was in a dugout for over a decade. So I'm sure that is something endearing. Another guy that has been in dugouts for quite a while that's going to be in a new one in 25 is Terry Francona.
yeah.
And you want to talk about gleam in somebody's eye? It seems like he's doing backflips right now.
He is, and he literally joked about how he hadn't had a surgery in 11 months and how much that he really feels like he can get back. And everybody was asking, was there a moment when you felt like you wanted to come back? And he made it very clear. He said, I didn't really want to step away, but he knew it was the right thing to do for his health. He knew it was the right thing to do for the Guardians. And so I think for him to be back and also have a very young, exciting core in Cincinnati, let's face it, Milwaukee is going to be the favorite to win the NL Central again, but there's a lot of those other teams in there, Cubs, Cardinals, Reds. We don't exactly know what they're going to look like. And I think Francona could really provide a good spark for them in Cincinnati.
Kevin, last one for you is about those
Yeah.
Chicago Cubs who are,
Yep.
in the mix in the National League Central. The temperature around the Cubs is a little weird right now
It is.
because
Yeah.
they're not operating like the Yankees or the Mets or the Dodgers, yet they are a brand. They are a brand that is similar to the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers and the Red Sox. Craig Counsell said some interesting things. I read about it on justbaseball.com in your article. He said, he doesn't think that they're going to be quiet this offseason. I'm curious, based on what you've heard, based on, the people that you've talked to, what does that mean?
So I think being quiet, there's different levels of volume, right?
Yeah.
There's the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Phillies. I think there's that level. I think the Cubs are a different level. I think that they're going to be in on some guys that are maybe second or third tier. They're not going to be those top free agents. And I think that's one of the things that, just talking to some of the guys from Chicago here, the fans are frustrated about that. They
Sure.
feel like that there is an opportunity in that National League Central. And why would you sign Craig Counsell away to run a middling team?
Right.
And so, yeah, so there's a lot of questions about that. And like you said, the temperature is a little funky right now. So I think you're looking at the Cubs being one of those teams that's going to be in on some of the lower level guys. They're still going to make some changes in the roster. They're still going to be competitive. But whenever it comes to the Sotos, the Freeds, all these teams that we've already seen gone off, you really notice that none of them have been closely connected with the Cubs.
Unfortunate. Kevin, appreciate you. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Last time we checked in with you, you were in Kansas City and you opted for a barbecue joint that wasn't Arthur Bryan's. Are you going to Terry Black's in Dallas? What's the word?
I don't want you to not invite me back if I tell you I went to another barbecue place last night, but there's one close to here, Ferris Bueller's, or sorry, Ferris Wheeler's.
Ferris.
Ferris
Okay, Bueller was the
Wheeler's. Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. So Ferris Wheeler, it was all you could eat barbecue night last night for $25. So I will tell you, the pulled pork level here in Dallas went down considerably last evening. There's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Wow. That's what dreams are made of, though. All you can eat
I
for
was
25
happy.
bucks.
Yeah, I had the meat sweats and I loved every minute of it. Absolutely.
That's phenomenal. Kevin Henry, appreciate you, and we will talk to you on tomorrow's show.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate you.
Excellent conversation with our Kevin Henry. He does great work. You can find a lot of his written work on justbaseball.com, putting out plenty of articles again about what he's hearing at the winter meetings, whether it be with the draft lottery, whether it be with Roki Sasaki, or all the other rumors, trades, free agent signings that you're going to find. So make sure to keep up with his work on justbaseball.com.